Sure. Here's section 1 of your script with a minimum of 760 words, written as a high-quality, direct, first-person infidelity story, avoiding repetition or filler, staying emotionally gripping and true to the outlined purpose. I met Luca on a Tuesday. I remember because Ethan had cancelled dinner. Again. His usual excuse, another late client call. I didn't even argue anymore. I just went to the cafe near my office, ordered my usual, and stared at the wall like I wasn't slowly disappearing inside my own life. Luca was behind the counter. Witty. Handsome. Confident without trying. He noticed my name before I even told him. Melissa, right. Soy vanilla latte? I laughed. That laugh stayed with me longer than the coffee did. I didn't go back because I needed caffeine. I went back because I liked how I felt when he said my name. Ethan and I had been married 4 years. Stable, functional, and flat. We didn't fight, we just stopped talking. No touches. No tension. Just silence and screens. I tried mentioning it once. Do you even see me anymore? He looked up, confused. What's that supposed to mean? I dropped it. What was the point? On Reddit, I posted anonymously. Subreddits like our dead bedrooms and our marriage hell became my midnight rituals. Hundreds of strangers understood me more than my husband did. But I still told myself I'd never cheat. That wasn't me. I had morals. Lines. Boundaries. Then came the rainy Thursday when the power flickered and Luca brought my drink to my table. You look like someone who needs to be heard, he said. I smiled. That's all I did. But something shifted in me. Saturday. I talked. About work, life, how I felt invisible in my own marriage. I was surprised at how much I said, and how easy it was. We kept it casual. He'd slip compliments in, soft but deliberate. If your husband doesn't adore you, he's blind. I should have shut it down. But I didn't. I wanted to believe him. I started dressing better for coffee. Red lips. Gold hoops. Not for Ethan. For Luca. My texts with Ethan were cold, factual. Grocery lists, appointment reminders. My DMS with Luca? A whole different story. It started with memes and quotes. Then selfies. Then God, you're beautiful. I replied with heart emojis. Still, I told myself, this isn't cheating. But I wasn't done. I knew where it was heading. I just didn't stop at point. One night, Luca sent a voice note. His voice, slow and deep, said, I want to taste your secrets. My stomach flipped. Not just from the words, but from how much I wanted to hear them again. I played it 3 times. The next day, Ethan left for a 2-day legal retreat. I didn't text him goodbye. I texted Luca instead, meet me after 6. No emoji. Just that. He didn't respond right away. I refreshed the screen more times than I care to admit. Then, just before noon, I'll bring the wine. That entire day felt like a fog. I don't remember what I wore to work or what I said to anyone. I only remember looking in the mirror before he arrived, red lipstick perfectly applied, hair curled, breath mint dissolving on my tongue. He knocked twice. I opened the door without hesitation. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no music or cinematic pause. Just eyes meeting eyes. He stepped in, dropped his keys, and we didn't speak for several minutes. Everything was skin, breath, tension. When it was over, we laid in silence. He traced the curve of my shoulder and said, you don't have to go back to a life that kills you slowly. I didn't reply. I didn't want to think about my life. I wanted to stay suspended in this moment, where I was desired, not just tolerated. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because of what we did, but because for once, I wasn't numb. In the morning, I woke up alone. Luca left a note on the nightstand. Just one line, can't stop thinking about last night. I smiled. And then I cried. Ethan texted around noon. Heading home early. Want takeout? I stared at the screen. His normalcy felt insulting. But I replied, sure. Ty. That night, I kissed him on the cheek when he walked in. He looked surprised. I told him I'd been thinking about us lately, that maybe we needed to spend more time together. He agreed. Said he was sorry for being so distant. Blamed work. I nodded, but I knew the truth. I had already left him. He just didn't know it yet. Absolutely. Here is section 2 of the script, written in the same direct, emotionally engaging, and non-repetitive style, with a minimum of 760 words. The affair didn't end that night. It became a rhythm. An addiction, almost. Every message from Luca lit something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Every time I heard his voice or touched his skin, I felt like I had taken my life back from whatever numb routine I had been trapped in. I began lying without hesitation. Work happy hours, made up errands, fake gym sessions. I crafted alibis with a precision I didn't know I had. Ethan didn't suspect anything. He never asked where I was, and I stopped offering details. It was too easy. That bothered me more than I expected. I kept my marriage on autopilot. Laundry done, meals cooked, polite smiles at family dinners. I didn't want Ethan to know, not because I loved him, but because I didn't want the guilt to become real. I told myself I was managing 2 lives, but in truth, I was watching one die while feeding the other. Luca made me feel invincible. He said things Ethan never did. You make the air feel heavier when you walk in. You taste like the part of life I forgot existed. It was poetry, and I was starved for it. I didn't care if it was sincere. It filled the gap. We didn't just sleep together, we talked. 4 hours. About dreams, regrets, the kind of intimacy that makes you forget you're doing something wrong. He'd paint while I sat on his couch, sipping wine and reading his half-finished poetry. I became his muse, his obsession. Or so I believed, but guilt crept in where silence used to live. Not all the time. Just enough to make me question everything in the quiet moments. I'd lie next to Ethan and wonder what he'd do if he knew. Would he break? Would he yell? Would he even care? I started deleting messages after every encounter. I changed Luca's name in my phone to Laura, work. I silenced notifications. My phone never left my side. I double-checked doors, made sure perfume wasn't lingering on my clothes. I knew how to cheat. I had become someone who was good at it. Still, something shifted. One night, Luca asked me if I loved him. I hesitated. I don't know what love is anymore. That wasn't a lie. I wasn't sure if I was running from Ethan or toward Luca, or if I was just lost in between. Ethan noticed. Maybe not everything, but enough. One night over dinner, he stared at me longer than usual and asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I froze. Just for a second. Then I laughed. "Is this really the first time you've looked me in the eye in weeks, and that's what you say?" He didn't push. He nodded, muttered okay, and went back to his food. But I knew the question would return. And next time, I might not have a good enough lie. The cracks got deeper. Luca became unpredictable. More possessive. He wanted more time. He wanted answers. "Are you going to leave him?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to lie to him too. I started feeling watched. Paranoid. Every buzz on my phone made my stomach twist. I was scared of being found out, but more scared of losing the feeling that Luca gave me. I didn't realize how far I'd fallen until I started daydreaming about Ethan catching me, just so I wouldn't have to keep choosing. Then it happened. We were sitting at dinner. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked at me with a blank expression. "You left your iPad unlocked," he said quietly. "Messages sync, you know." I said nothing. He reached into his pocket, pulled out my phone, and slid it across the table. "Go ahead. Read it. Or should I quote it for you? Your scent is still on my sheets. Come ruin me again." He didn't raise his voice. That made it worse. I tried to speak, but no words came. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, I saw pain. Not anger. Not shock. Just pain. A deep, quiet grief that told me he already knew long before he confirmed it. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door. No shouting. No accusations. Just silence. And that silence hit harder than anything I could have imagined. I sat there alone, staring at the phone, wondering how I let it get this far. Wondering why it didn't hurt until now. Wondering if it was all worth it, or if I had just destroyed the only person who ever truly trusted me. Here is section 3 of the script, written in the same focused, emotionally intense style with a minimum of 760 words, and staying completely on point. Ethan didn't come home that night. I didn't call. I couldn't. What was I going to say? That it wasn't what it looked like? That it was a mistake? He'd seen enough to know exactly what it was. And deep down, I knew he had already started grieving me long before he had proof. The silence after exposure is the loudest thing I've ever heard. No shouting, no accusations, just absence. Ethan moved out the next day. A bag was gone, and a note on the counter read, "You chose him." I stood in the kitchen holding that piece of paper like it was a death certificate. I messaged Luca that night. He found out. His reply was instant. "Are you okay?" I said I didn't know. That was the truth. I didn't feel free. I felt untethered, floating in the middle of nothing. I expected relief. What I got was regret in 1,000 sharp cuts. For a few days, Luca was there. He brought food, said comforting things. But it didn't feel the same. Without the secrecy, the thrill died. We sat on his couch and stared at each other, no longer star-crossed but stuck with the reality of what we'd done. There was no more hiding. And without the hiding, there was no magic. I asked him once if he thought this would last. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down and mumbled, "I don't know what I thought." I realized then that I had never really known him. He had been a fantasy. I'd fallen for an idea, not a person. 2 weeks later, he stopped replying as often. Then not at all. I went to the cafe. He wasn't there. New barista. New energy. No trace of him. He had vanished as easily as he entered. I wasn't devastated, just numb. I had lost my husband, ruined my home, and now the man I'd risked it all for had disappeared like none of it meant anything. I didn't tell anyone at first. I carried the shame alone. Eventually, word got out. Some friends reached out. Most didn't. The ones who did didn't look me in the eye the same way. I could see the judgment under their concern. How did it happen? Were you unhappy? Do you regret it? I didn't answer any of them honestly. I didn't want sympathy or scorn. I just wanted to be invisible. Ethan filed for divorce. It was clean, fast, cold. He didn't contest anything. I signed the papers with shaking hands. A part of me wanted him to yell, to fight, to do anything that showed he still cared enough to be angry. But he was done. I'd burned the bridge and salted the earth beneath it. I moved into a small apartment with peeling paint and thin walls. No wedding photos, no shared furniture, just a bed, a table, and silence. I started therapy. Once a week, Tuesdays at 4. I talked. Mostly about guilt. About how I thought love was supposed to feel like fire, but I forgot that fire also destroys. Some nights, I still check Ethan's social media. He doesn't post often. But once, a photo appeared, him smiling with someone new. She looked kind. Warm. Safe. He looked peaceful. I didn't cry. I just stared. It's strange how you can feel both happy for someone and completely shattered at the same time. I thought about reaching out. An apology. A letter. Something. But what would I even say? That I made a mistake? That I thought I was chasing love but I was really just running from myself? I never sent it. Some things don't deserve closure. Reddit became my confession booth. Anonymous posts at 2 a.m., telling strangers what I couldn't admit to friends. I didn't look for sympathy. I just needed to say it somewhere. To put it out in the world and hope someone else felt as broken as I did. Luca never contacted me again. I'm not surprised. I wasn't in love with him, I was in love with how he made me feel. There's a difference. And I didn't understand that until everything around me had collapsed. People think cheating is about sex. Sometimes it is. But often, it's about being seen. It's about validation, attention, escape. And when you realize that the escape isn't real, you're left with the consequences and nothing else. I destroyed something good because I was bored, lonely, and too afraid to say, I'm unhappy. I didn't ask for what I needed. I looked for it in someone who didn't know me anything. Now I live with the result. I get through my days. I don't romanticize what happened. I don't justify it. I sit with it. That's my punishment. And maybe my lesson. In the end, I wanted to be wanted. Desired. Craved. But what I got was a moment of feeling alive, followed by a lifetime of knowing I broke something that will never be whole again, certainly. Here's section 4 of the script, written in the same direct, emotionally raw, and non-repetitive style with a minimum of 760 words. I thought time would clean the wound, but it didn't. It only made it quieter. The chaos faded, but the emptiness remained, settling into my routines like a second skin. I didn't go out much anymore. I avoided places Ethan and I had loved, avoided people who might ask questions. The worst part wasn't the loneliness, it was the clarity. I saw everything now, without emotion clouding the facts. There wasn't one moment where I ruined everything. It was a slow erosion. A series of small choices. Not speaking up. Not trying harder. Letting resentment replace honesty. And when Luca came along, I didn't resist because it felt easier to be wanted by a stranger than ignored by the man I married. I started to understand something important. Infidelity doesn't start in bedsheets. It starts in conversations you never have, in distance you never close, in needs you never voice. I'd blamed Ethan for our disconnection, but I never fought for connection either. I let our marriage become background noise, and then I turned the volume off completely. I don't miss Luca. That surprised me. I miss what he represented. The attention, the escape, the fantasy. But him? No. He was just the exit sign I ran toward without thinking about the fire I left behind. I used to think I was the victim of neglect. That if Ethan had been more present, more affectionate, I wouldn't have strayed. But now, I see the truth. I had choices. I could have ended the marriage. I could have spoken up. I could have chosen honesty over convenience. But I didn't. Because cheating wasn't just about what I wasn't getting, it was about what I didn't want to confront. Ethan was never cruel. He was distant, yes. Distracted. But I never gave him a chance to fix it. I assumed he wouldn't care, and maybe that made it easier to justify what I did. But he did care. I saw it in his face when he read those messages. I destroyed his faith in love with a few swipes on a screen. After the divorce, I kept my distance from anyone new. Dating didn't interest me. I didn't trust myself. How could I? I had seen what I was capable of when I let desire cloud my judgment. I didn't want to fall into another cycle of chemistry without substance. I wasn't healed, and I wasn't ready. Therapy helped me dissect my decisions. I talked about my childhood, my parents' cold dynamic, the way affection was something I learned to crave quietly. I saw patterns. I saw how I'd been trained to survive in silence, how validation became a drug, how I'd learned to measure my worth through someone else's desire. It was uncomfortable. Necessary. Ugly. Months passed. I changed jobs. Cut my hair. Small reinventions. I stayed offline. No dating apps, no thirst traps, no chasing dopamine through strangers. I needed to learn how to be enough for myself before I ever let someone else close again. I still think about Ethan sometimes, not romantically, but reflectively. I hope he's happy. I hope the woman in his photo loves him in the ways I didn't know how to. I hope she listens, touches his hand at dinner, tells him he matters. I hope she does all the things I once stopped doing. Regret is quieter than guilt. It doesn't scream. It sits beside you in the dark and whispers what could have been if you'd just paused before crossing a line. But I don't hate myself anymore. I did for a while. I tore myself apart, replayed every choice, tried to rewrite the past in my head. But the past doesn't care how many times you rewrite it. It only exists in one version, the one you chose. Forgiveness doesn't always come from others. Sometimes you never get that. Sometimes you only get the chance to forgive yourself, and even that takes time you don't think you deserve. But I'm working on it. Slowly. Quietly. One honest thought at a time. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes. Not as a symbol of love, but as a reminder of consequences. It sits on my desk, a small circle of metal that once meant forever. Now, it just means I once made a vow I didn't keep, and that matters more than I thought it would. Some people say we are all capable of cheating. I think that's true. But I also think we are all capable of stopping ourselves if we really want to. I didn't stop myself. I let my needs justify my betrayal, and in doing so, I became the villain in a story that could have had a very different ending. Now, I write my truths anonymously, hoping they land somewhere useful. Maybe someone reads this and pauses before stepping into the same fire. Maybe they ask the hard questions first. Maybe they fix what's broken, or leave with honesty, not deceit. That's the only good that can come from this, being honest about how easy it is to break a life and how hard it is to rebuild one after.